What do you get when you combine Stephen King's It with Monster House and a pile of Reddit creepypastas from 2013? Well, a story about friends who learn to cure demonic house possession through the power of friendship, and something about trauma. Hi, and welcome back to Orbiting the Shelf, where today I am talking about The Staircase in the Woods by Chuck Wendig. Now, this was one I was actually really looking forward to. I included it in my last April 2025 TBR video, and after reading When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy, I was hoping that this would be a fun and refreshing palate cleanser. And to be fair, to its credit, even, When the Wolf Comes Home by Nat Cassidy left such a horrible taste in my mouth that this was almost refreshing. This was almost fun in comparison, and I think this book got an unfair high score from me because it came after such an absolute atrocity. Now, as always, if you don't mind liking and subscribing, it helps very much as I'm growing this channel in a very niche community, doing very niche things, and every single one of you is very much appreciated. Now, with that being said, getting right into the meat and potatoes of the video, this will not be long. I will not do a 30-minute dissect on the pros, the meaning, what could have been better, what could have been worse. This is just going to be a straightforward review for a relatively straightforward book. Now, getting right into it, you don't want to know anything about this book, you don't want to read the back, you want to go into it relatively blind, aside from my goofy, spoiler-free intro I always do. You just want to know someone's opinion so you can tell whether or not the book is worth your time, shelf space, money, etc., maybe even your Audible credit. Now, with that being said, what did I rate this book on a scale of 1 through 10 on the subjective rating scale, with 1 being the worst book I've ever read, ruining my month, my life, my year? I think about this book regularly, it's so bad. It is a detriment to the genre. It should not exist. It's barely literature. And on the other end, 10 is perfect. It sets the bar for the genre. It is something I think about constantly. I come back to it. I revisit it. It changed my life for the better, etc., etc., etc. And 5 being average. 5 is where 80% of content lies. Don't be too hard on 5s. 5 is the $5 matinee movie you go to see on a Tuesday night and you leave thinking, that was okay. You don't regret it. You don't hate it. It's just something that's going to live on your shelf or in your library for a while, and you are never going to think about it again. Once again, don't be too hard on 5s. But with that being said, what was this book on the scale of 1 through 10? Well, personally, I thought this book deserved a very fair 3.5. Now, let me explain what that means. 3.5 is definitely below average. There was still some value. It was still minorly entertaining. It was still written sort of okay. Depending on who you are, you might have felt like you wasted money. You might have felt like it was a good time. But more often than not, you're gonna be like, ugh, I could have easily DNF'd this, and I probably should have. And that sort of describes how I felt throughout this entire book. Now, with that being said, before I jump into anything further, that is my opinion, that is my rating. If that is all you need to know before you buy this book or decide to not waste your time with it, go with God. I bless you on your journey. Thank you so much for even the little 4-minute view you just gave me. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. And if that is all you need to know, Godspeed. Now, with that being said, I'll jump into the next section, which is audiobook. As you know, I typically both buy the written book and the audiobook so that I can give it a fair review on all fronts. And as you're probably aware, audiobooks are my jam. That's my go-to source of entertainment. I listen to them at the gym, in the shower, while I'm working, etc., etc., etc. Now, keep in mind the audiobook rating is different from the book review. I would give the audiobook an A+. I think this is very well done. The production is great, the acting is great, the actors did a fantastic job. There's no weird noises, there's no weird breaths, there's no creaking chairs, and the audiobook is genuinely an experience. Now, I think this is one of the rare cases where even though a book is bad, an audiobook adds an extra layer of depth to it that makes it more enjoyable. I think if you're super stubborn and you're going to consume this, you're going to have a way better time with the audiobook than the written word. I think the written word is going to be boring and you're going to be way more likely to DNF this just because it's not that special. And if you listen to the audiobook, you're going to be like, it's entertaining enough to be my time killer between my work-home commute today. I really don't think you're going to have too bad of a time with this if you choose to consume it via audiobook, although I do have a couple of gripes when it comes to the audiobook. I did say the performances are great. I did say the actors are great. I did say everything was great. I have very minor gripes. This is a dual cast audiobook, meaning there's a female narrator doing the parts for lore and a male narrator doing the parts for everybody else, hypothetically. There are a few points in the book where the male narrator is forced to do like little ad-lib sounds like a cat eating, and he goes at one point, and it absolutely sends me. It breaks the immersion, and you're gonna die laughing at a couple of parts because it just sounds so ludicrous. And my second complaint is one that you're gonna hear from me fairly often when it comes to dual narrated books, male or masculine, whatever you want to call it, actors doing female parts and vice versa. It almost never goes well. It's very rare you find a voice actor for audiobooks that's talented enough to pull it off believably, and this is one of the cases where it's done so poorly and so forced that it's cringe. And the female narrator, I'll tag them up here because I don't know who they are off the top of my head. The female narrator is forced to do male parts, and light spoilers here. Just go ahead and jump forward to the next section listed below on the bar if you don't want to hear this. I don't think it's going to ruin your time. I don't think the book is worth your time anyways, but if you don't want to know, you're certain you're going to read it, go ahead and skip ahead. The female narrator is forced to do the part of like a demonically possessed thing or individual. I'll try to give very, very few spoilers. And it's supposed to be like a deep, intimidating, demonic voice. And it is so bad. It is so cringe that I had to stop my audiobook, put it down, wait till I got home, and I had to finish the rest of the book on paper because the performance was so gratingly awful and cringe, I couldn't bear to listen to it. Let me give you a quick sample. All right, so I finally found it. I'm just gonna give you a 10-second snippet so you can understand the utter pain and cringe I went through trying to finish this in the audiobook form.
Tank treads, drawers of gold teeth in a liberated camp, the starving and the sick and the dead. The pain in us was electric and alive. It flowed through us like a boiling river. It became a part of us, and we grew to love the pain. I'm dying of cringe.
It was so bad. It was so bad. I can't. Anyways, that's just like a taste of how cringe those parts of the audiobook were. If you can't handle it, I don't blame you. Just don't touch the book. If you can't handle the cringe when it comes to the female voice actor doing the demonic parts and the male parts, just don't do it. And if you're convinced you need to read this book, good luck to you. Good on you. I admire your strength. But with that being said, let's jump into the things I liked about the book. Starting off, it's like immediately super clear where this book draws inspiration from. It's literally just the plot of It. I mean, shamelessly so. It is the most shameless ripoff I've ever seen. I mean, group of kids makes a promise to one another to protect each other through thick and thin, the thick being monsters and the thin being bullies who are like strangely willing to take the life of children in really horrific ways, and like your classic Stephen King style bully setup. And then the thick obviously being like interdimensional monster. And it doesn't stop here. It's quite literally It down to the friend group. You have the fat kid who is bullied relentlessly by the bullies who want to kill him for some reason, turned fit, hyper successful adult. You have the girl who is like weirdly sexually provocative as a child that everybody in the group wants to sleep with, and there's some strange child romance scenes for some reason. The scared kid who is like habitually doing tics and hurting himself, and then there's like the asshole leader of the group with an abusive dad. I mean, and then there's like the overachiever, hyper successful one who the story sort of revolves around, because I don't want to spoil anything. I mean, it is It down to its bones. And then the reason in the intro I said it's just It combined with Monster House and 2013 creepypastas is because instead of a psycho clown, you have a psycho interdimensional house who's out to get people for some silly reason. And then the creepypasta part comes from those old stories about staircases in the woods you'd see on Reddit turned into YouTube videos back in the day, and you'd share them with your friends on like Vine or YouTube or whatever, and you'd be like, oh, look at this is so creepy. Cryptids and staircases in the woods. There is really, truly not a single original thing in this book. And at first, you're like, okay, I can very clearly see this is a ripoff, but the author isn't breaking the rule of cool. It's interesting, it's entertaining, the characters are fun, so I'll give it a chance. It seems like it's a ripoff, but he's doing it justice. Therefore, I don't care. The book has a very strong start. The characters are fun, they're interesting, and it just steadily declines, and then nosedives about halfway through and becomes absolute garbage. Thing I liked, it's interesting for like the first couple hours of the book or audiobook. The characters at first are fun, the premise at first seems fun, and then it nosedives, and that's the only thing I like. So jumping into the second part of the video, like I said, I promised it would be short. Things I didn't like: 1, how derivative the story is. 2, how everything is just a shameless copy of It, Monster House, and creepypastas. 3, it does the thing a lot of modern horror books do, where it tries to take sensitive subjects that are disturbing and turn them into like a horror story, which is fair game. I do the same thing when I write, lots of authors do. But the thing is, like I talked about in the last video with Nat Cassidy's books, you have to walk the fine line between being exploitive and doing the topic justice. And once again, this book falls into the exploitive area. A lot of very sensitive subjects are hammered on by the author for the sake of making the book like disturbing and kind of sick, and a lot of authors think that's where horror comes from. Rather than being story-driven horror, they just get really exploitive and up the ante with like gruesome descriptions and lots of gore, and this book falls prey to that pretty heavily. It feels like the author sort of loses inspiration and loses the plot halfway through and starts to rely on gratuitous excessive gore and disturbing content instead of just driving the story home and letting the horror speak for itself. And he'll touch on children and child exploitive material. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to get demonetized. And so we lean super heavily into disturbing exploitive material to drive the horror home, because the author's story this time around lacks the skill to do so on its own. And that's the kind of the curse of modern horror I've started to notice. The second thing I don't like, speaking of losing the plot, is the story starts to feel silly, and it feels like the author sort of lost the like lifeline rope of the story he had been holding on to the entire time that was sort of guiding him. And the way the characters start to solve the problem of the house and all of the issues it poses is through your classic like power of friendship and letting go of the past sort of thing. And the house never really gets to breathe. It never gets to speak for itself. The horror is never really naturally driven. And in the end, the book just wraps up with like, through the power of friendship and by letting go of the past. There's no sense of consequence. There's no sense of urgency. Funny enough, it kind of felt like one of those nonsensical 2013 Reddit creepypastas, just extended to like 90,000 words needlessly for some reason. It suffers from everything I talked about in the Nat Cassidy video. It's just not utter garbage like the Nat Cassidy book was. It's still entertaining. It's not as gratuitous with its garbage, disturbing depictions of gore for the sake of horror. But yeah, man, it just really feels like this is the curse of modern horror. A loose plot with shaky characters nobody cares about, and everything is just an excuse to usher in disturbing descriptions of gore because nobody can genuinely engineer horror through story these days. And that's essentially just this book. And to wrap it up, do I think it's worth your time? Not really. Do I think it's worth your Audible credit? Not really. And the last thing I'll gripe about is the pacing. It's just like, honestly, if you took out all the flashback scenes, most of which I think are kind of needless, I think this book could easily be shrunk down to like 60,000, 50,000 words, and I'm just guesstimating at the word count. It felt like it went by relatively fast, even though it was kind of bloated. Overall, I just couldn't in good conscience recommend this book being worth your time, your shelf space, or your money, or your Audible credit. And I don't want to spend too much time on this review because it's truly just everything I always gripe about with most modern horror books. It's just lazy, and it feels like it's publishers who realize how popular the horror space is right now, and a lot of publishers are just trying to like play hungry hippos with horror authors because the genre is growing, the market for horror is growing. And so it's kind of like what Netflix did a few years ago, where they're just like gathering up authors and books to pump out to sell to people. And because of that, a lot of just garbage is making its way through. And right now, modern horror is in this place that I think romance is kind of into, funny enough, because I always talk about how similar they are, where like there's such a hungry market that they're just pushing out everything because they know it'll sell. And so people are just making it through the cracks and pushing out garbage. A lot of these like amateur horror authors are like, oh, I don't need to engineer fear or a sense of urgency through the plot. I can just write gross things in my book and exploit sensitive subjects, and then that's horror. And so long as there's like a sloppy, lazy character arc for somebody, they're like, oh, here you go, combine these two things, book. Buy my book, please. And that just kind of feels like the state that horror is in right now. And that's probably a dangerous opinion to have as someone trying to like start querying agents to sell his book next month. But, you know, I'll never lie to you guys. I'll never lie to myself, and I'll never like be safe with my opinions on literature just for the sake of profiting. But those are my thoughts on the book, man. If you like it, which I don't think a lot of people do, judging by the Goodreads reviews, because the Goodreads reviews really do seem to sort of mirror what I'm saying. And when a book is like 3 stars average on Goodreads, you know it's probably bad, because people are super generous on that platform with their ratings and their reviews. So if that tells you anything, the majority of stars on Goodreads are like 2, 3, 4. I don't think it was good. If the Nat Cassidy book was here, this book is here, and then good horror books like Between Two Fires and some of the other ones on my shelf are like way up here. It's just barely a step above exploitative garbage. It's just barely kind of entertaining. Who's this book for? If you're scraping the bottom of the barrel, and I mean really scraping, and you just want to read some garbage to fill your needs until the big releases in May come out, this book is for you. I mean, sure, maybe you'll enjoy it enough to warrant whatever you spend on it. I didn't. But with that being said, I don't want to sit here, get super into all of this. That's my opinion on the book. I'm not going to spoil it too much. I'm not going to dissect it forever like I usually do. Let me know what you think. I'm always open to opinions. If I'm super wrong, tell me why I'm super wrong. If you're the author and you are watching this and you hate me right now, feel free to reach out and tell me why I'm super wrong. I would love to have a discussion with you. I would love to know what I missed. Maybe I'm the idiot. Maybe I'm missing something. I am certainly not the be-all end-all of book opinions here. I'm just a dude with a camera. So at the end of the day, if you think I'm wrong, by all means let me know. I don't think most of you will, though. I think most people tend to resonate with my opinions. I think they're very fair, and so far this is only the second book I've ever given like a bad review to. So let me know how you felt about it. If you agree, by all means. I love being in an echo chamber of similar opinions, so by all means let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time. I appreciate all of you. I look forward to hearing what you have to say about this, and I will see you next week as the May releases start to trickle out, because there's a lot of good ones this month and I am super excited for them. I will see you next time. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Bye.